Our next speaker is Victor Rush from Tucker Davis Technologies. He has his own PhD from UC Santa Barbara, has worked as a staff scientist developing some of those technologies, and is now also director in sales and is going to talk to us.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me see if I can pull up my screen. Can everybody see? It looks like I'm showing the screen. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So let me kind of walk you through what TDT is about. We are not, and I always say this, we're not looking towards being a clinical and FDA approved device company. We are here primarily, actually only to help basic and translational researchers develop their products and also to extend and expand basic research. So we are what we would call a vertically integrated company, and basically that means that everything from the design to the engineering to the production is all done in one facility. So we can take a concept and bring it to what I would call a beta market in about a month to 2 months. So we're very fast at that, but we also have excellent engineers who are very careful about making sure that all the equipment works properly. I've been at this company for 20 years, and so I've watched it develop from sort of a smaller company that was next to an airport into a company that has its own building and its own production facilities. We have things like CNC machines, pick and place machines for doing all of the product integration. As a background, I am not an engineer. I have a background in biology. I got my degree at UC Santa Barbara, as we used to call it, Surfboard, in ecology and evolution, and I've been on one too many postdocs to count before moving to industry. So just to go back to vertical integration, here's an example. To the left, you can see all of our PC boards that are being fully populated by integrated chips, and to the right we have the development of our software, spike sorting algorithm, and our hardware development. So where are we going? So this is a much smaller vision than some of the visions that you've seen earlier. We are really here to do basic style research, which means that we're going to have tools to integrate all of your signals. Processing sort of anything from single unit activity to something like a force plate. And to do that, we want to also use that in a closed loop control. So we want to acquire the signals, process them either on a real-time signal processor or offline on a computer, whether it be a Linux box or a Windows machine, and then use that to either stimulate electrically or optically your animal. So this is a good example of what the status quo looks like. You've got a poor monkey that's wired up, and you have 3 computers to process the signal. You've got something that's going to acquire the data and dump it to a recording machine. You have a decoder that's going to be controlling some sort of neuroprosthetic or do some sort of BCI-based configuration. And our idea is we want to basically take this process and convert it into something that allows you to do precise either sub-millisecond or 10 to 30 millisecond signal control. So what we have is basically a typical data acquisition for a lot of researchers. You have cortical and microelectrode recordings, EMG recordings to look at the responses, video data for motion analysis, behavioral information, and then other things like force plates and treadmills. And all of this stuff is being moved about in lots of different ways. And what we want to do is take it and convert it into just one processing environment. And of course, we want to use our equipment to do that. So we have basically integrating all of the data into one device, processing it so that everything is time synchronized. So these are the advantages of this. Everything is time synchronized, data is stored in one repository. You only need 1 or 2 computers for doing your BCI and BMI control, or maybe your own custom FPGA, and you only have to deal with one company. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about is how we're going to do that. So TDT is basically a hardware and software company, and we have real-time processors for controlling digital and analog inputs. We have amplifiers that are designed to deliver acquire different signal types, whether they're single units, local field potentials, or EMG. And we also have amplifier boards that are medically isolated, so you don't have to worry about signal crosstalk. And then we have hardware designed for real-time closed-loop control. And where we want to go in the future is, again, a lot simpler than some of the things that we've talked about. We want to do improved video tracking. For those who know, we've expanded into optical imaging for closed loop control. So we're developing software and hardware interfaces that are going to allow people to acquire either fiber photometry data, which is basically one photon imaging. People are more familiar with the miniscope, acquire signals from the miniscope, process those signals in real time, and then integrate that into a single software platform where you have an integrated Python API for doing your programming. So what I'd like to do is just do a quick example of some of that. So I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to share my recording system, if I can pull it up. Give me a few seconds to pull back. Oh, here we go. Can everybody see that? That's our Synapse software. So what I'm going to show you is just basically a very tight closed loop control setup that's based on a single neuron firing. So we're just going to do a preview here. So I have a single neuron here that we're doing spike sorting and clustering on in real time. And then down here, we're actually sending out stimulation pulses when that neuron crosses a threshold. And so this is tightly controlled. This is basically, you can do this as fast as 1 millisecond or less for doing the stimulation, and you can actually use it to control the intensity of a stimulator based on how quickly a neuron is firing. This is on the order of just a couple milliseconds, but if I've expanded it out, you could actually combine 5 or 10 spiking activities for doing and looking to see how that changes and using that to drive a stimulator. But what we've gotten into that's a little bit more fascinating is what we would call a little bit more complex offline analysis. So what we've done is we have integrated into our system Python. So I'm just going to click on this. This is called Pynapse. This is our new thing. You can basically take lots of different inputs and then use that to control lots of outputs. And then on top of that, you can write your own Python code. So basically what this is doing is it's pulling in a signal, show you sort of a flow chart of it, where it's grabbing neural activity and then combining it into a single output. And so this is basically going to combine signals from multiple channels. And if you can think about it, you could basically have weighted programs. You could write your own algorithm in real time for sort of a very tight closed loop control. This is on the order of 10 to 30 milliseconds. And so right over here, I don't know if you can see this, it shows you how many times the neuron's firing, and then if you can see, we're actually increasing or decreasing the amount of spiking activity. So if I go back over here and I start dragging things to different channels, we're going to see a decrease in the intensity of the firing pattern. And if I get rid of the spiking activity altogether, it's going to go to 0, hopefully. And this is all being done in real time. So we're actually pushing back the data, running a very tight closed loop stimulation parameter and using that to push out spiking activity and close in real time. So, and this can be as tight as 10 to 30 milliseconds. It can be as long as a second. You can control all of those parameters. So it's one of the cool new features. And I want to say that from conception to market, so we'll actually have this out by sometime by September, was under 2.5 months. So it's one of the really cool things about working in a company is that they can come up with an idea and then spin it out into a product super fast. So this gives you an example. Here's the per animal if you were just using Synapse. And then as we add in our closed loop programming environment, that's our Pinapse software. So one of our future things that we're moving forward on is basically doing more complex integration with a video system and then integrating the optical imaging techniques such as 1 and 2 photon imagers. I'd like to thank you all again for allowing me to present. And if you have any questions, just reach out.
Thank you very much, Victor. Of course, I'm going to take all questions from students or question and answer tab. So please feel free to write them down. My very first one is actually in the importance of features when you're delivering a product to the public. What do you think about that?
So, you know, it's an interesting thing. So when we came up with Pinapse, the first idea was to use it more as a behavioral toolbox. So one of the issues that always comes up is, you know, basically how do I integrate with my external behavioral box, whether it's MedAssociates, Lafayette, or whatever. And we were like, we're kind of frustrated with this because all of that information is not easily synchronized into our software or hardware. And so the idea of Pinapse in the beginning the idea in the beginning was we want this as basically a behavioral control interface. And then we realized you can use it for lots of different things. So closed loop control. If basically people want to use it to control how their hardware is turned on and off. All of these things are going to be developed into the system as we get feedback from our customers. And so this is actually where, you know, throwing out a product and seeing what comes back becomes really important. We think this is a great product. We'll find out probably in 6 months as to how many people start using it.
Actually, that links a little bit to this idea that we actually sort of discussed beforehand, but considering like an industry of like on the middle size sort of. How do you? So since you have like quite some long experience in products and sales, how does it work in the long term? The concept of differentiating yourself from the competition.
You know, it's an interesting thing because there are two types of companies out there you start to find. There are the companies that care about what everybody else is doing, and sort of then there are the companies that like kind of say, okay, well, what are we good at and what do our customers need? And the classic example with TDT was we worked with Deseros Lab, Tom Davidson, or whoever people know him, brilliant guy. And he looked at our hardware and he said, hey, you can use this for doing fiber photometry. And so he put together a little circuit to do that. And we would start getting phone calls. Hey, can you send us this piece of hardware and this software? We're like, why are we getting phone calls for this one component? And then we started talking to them and it's like, well, this is for fiber photometry. And we're like, well, we need to, if there's so many people doing this, then what we need to do is develop a system for doing fiber photometry. And that brought us down this path. So we were actually, a lot of our market now is fiber photometry. I don't know if any of you know about this. It's basically like a local field potential with, you know, GCamp expression. So for anybody who does molecular biology out there, this is a great new field. And moving from that, we started to look at what else we needed. Well, we needed things like LED drivers, photosensors. And so we just started to develop all of that and use that to come to market. And then we were like, well, now we want to basically be able to use our stuff for, you know, closer field photon imaging, calcium imaging, similar to endoscopic and miniscope. And so that's where we're moving towards. And that would not have been done without customers saying, hey, we need something new and better. So it's just, I mean, it's a tangent move, but we're very happy we did that tangent move.
Thank you very much, Victor. And thank you